Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending on where you are and when you are watching this or listening to this, rather. Thank you for joining us and coming to my channel and checking out what I've got to say. It's always a pleasure. So let's get right into it. Glad you're listening, Val, even though you're at your appointment. I hope it goes well and let me know how it goes. I feel very honored and privileged that you chose me for your listening pleasure whilst you're in the waiting room. Guess it's a little bit more interesting than those Lifetime magazines that they always have, or National Geographic. Although I like National Geographic, it can get a bit repetitive. So glad you're joining us, and we're going to get right into it. There's so much information to discuss on this case. It's unreal. It's a case, like I mentioned to you, Val, that I've been obsessed with for I think since at least last summer, and I've kind of come back to it and done more and more research on it, and I think I'm confident I know all there is publicly that I can get to know about it. So I feel very, I feel like I'm in a very good position to give a full account of the crimes and possible motivations of the son of Sam, of David Berkowitz, and of possible involvement of others, and cult involvement, and possible CIA involvement as well. So it gets rather tinfoil hatty and juicy. So you'll have to bear with me whilst we go through this. It may get quite difficult at points, but just hang on in there. And I understand if it's a bit much for some people. It's not for everyone, but for those of you who do enjoy it and do enjoy the more tinfoil hat type stuff, then this is the one for you, certainly. So let's start. So he was born the son of Sam. Obviously, not born the son of Sam, later named the son of Sam, but he was born Richard David Falco to Betty Broder and Joe Kleiman. And Falco is because his biological mother, Betty Elizabeth Broder, was married to a man by the surname of Kleiman, and not Kleiman, but of Falco. And she had an affair with a man by the name of Joe Kleiman. And Berkowitz was the result of an infidelity of an affair between two people who were married to others. And Berkowitz was born on the 1st of June, 1953. And both of his biological parents were Jewish, and both of them were married to Gentiles and having an affair with each other. So they were both Jewish but married to non-Jewish people. So that's a bit of background of who where David Berkowitz comes from, and his culture and his background. He was placed up for adoption within a few days of his birth, and his adopted parents told him that his biological mother died whilst giving birth to him. So David spent a lot of his childhood fearful that his biological father would want to hunt him down and do him harm, over him believing that he, killed his mother by being born, and that kind of started some psychological issues early on for him. He was adopted by a Jewish Bronx couple, Pearl and Nathan Berkowitz, who were middle aged at the time and couldn't have children. And then they changed his name to David Richard Berkowitz. He had a bar mitzvah, but was bullied in his youth for being Jewish and overweight, and was often called chubby. So this further added to his sense of isolation and worthlessness, and initial, psychological, issues that, clearly weren't handled in any way. That he was sent to a therapist, and they said that he was basically just it was normal for him to be acting the way he was considering his background, but they didn't give him any real support or strategies or anything like that, which nowadays you'd hope they'd do a bit of a better job. But it depends on how much money you've got and how deep your pockets are. And the Berkowitzes were middle class, but they weren't made of money, and I don't think that he got anything beyond that. And I don't think it was even a shrink per se, like in a psychiatrist's office. I think it was like a school counselor that he saw, and so that kind of explains probably why he didn't, get the kind of direction that he needed. And then another trauma happened, and his adoptive mother, who he was very close with, Pearl, passed away when he was 14 of cancer. And his father later remarried, and this caused David to resent his adopted father and his new stepmother. Because he felt like his adopted father, Nathan, was trying to replace Pearl, and David couldn't tolerate that, and it caused further behavioral issues to where David, who was of above average intelligence, yet performed poorly in school, performed even poorer, and stopped attending school regularly, and was mainly involved in petty larceny, so shoplifting and setting fires. And that's basically what he did to spend his time with other kids who were sneaking out of school and getting up to mischief. I certainly did when I was that age, but I didn't go out and go on a shooting spree like he did. So just because a kid may be acting out doesn't mean they're obviously going to grow up to be a monster. So that isn't really a mark against anybody that they got up to some mischief in childhood. A lot of people do, so long as you wisen up and get out of it, and it doesn't turn into anything worse, far worse, like it did with him. Um, and then at age 17, Berkowitz left home and joined the US Army Infantry, and was sent to South Korea in 1971. And he was honorably discharged in 1974. However, during his time in Korea, he contracted an unknown STD from a Korean sex worker, probably his first sexual experience as well. So this could probably start the roots of his disdain for women, and his disliking for women could possibly be rooted in this. I know it's been speculated that that's the case, that that's what is the cause of it all, but that such is the case for many servicemen of that era who went overseas and contracted STDs, whether it be in Korea or in Vietnam or Germany or wherever US Army soldiers were posted. A lot of men contracted STDs, but they didn't go and start murdering women. So it's possible that that had an impact on him, that made him resent women and generalize. But he didn't go murdering sex workers. He was murdering people in couples in lovers' lanes, in parked cars. And I don't think he was the only murder. Oh, glad you're still here, Val. Glad you're still here, and I'm really pleased that you're here joining us. I'm just really glad to have you here. You've got such an insightful true crime brain. Like, even when it's a case that you're not, familiar with at all. I mean, I know you are. You are familiar with the case. You've seen the Son of Sam, the Summer of Sam, or the Son of Sam, the movie, and like about it. But like, even in cases where you're not like a total like expert at it, you always amaze me with your instincts. Like, you'll say something in chat, and you obviously don't know what you're saying, whether it's speculation from your perspective, but you're always right. And I like, it amazes me. You've got like a really good sixth sense of kind of, you're very good at intuition. You've got a very strong sense of intuition, and in true crime, that's perfect. You'd make a perfect private detective. And like, seriously, you really amaze me. I want to watch some docs on the Sun of Sam. Oh yeah, there's great ones. I'll send you some. There's some on Netflix that does explore what I'm going to get onto later on. about the cult angle, about all the kind of tinfoil hat stuff. And there's also several podcasts that I've listened through a bunch of times that I really like that I'll send you as well. And it's just really good resources. And they interview people, detectives who are on the case, police officers who actually like agree with the tinfoil hat stuff, that they are even saying we think that there was more than one gunman, but we were basically told to shut up because it would cause further public panic if they thought that there were others involved, and it was costing the city money, but we'll get further into that later on. Um, but you were usually right with it. Oh, thanks so much. I really appreciate that. And you have a great sixth sense too. Honestly, that's a real big compliment from you. Like I said in my last live, you're my true crime inspiration. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have had the guts or the inclination that I thought that I could, come and do this myself. If it wasn't for your encouragement and praise, I wouldn't be doing this right now. So everybody, who enjoys what I do, you've got Val Knox to thank. She's great. She's amazing. And but yeah, he after he got out of yeah. But yeah, back to the show. Yeah. Uh, but after he got out of the army, he was obviously honorably discharged. So, like, when you're in the army, you get educational benefits, and he spent a year at the Bronx Community College in 1975. And during this time, he actually located his biological mother after Nathan, his adopted father, told him the truth. He said, obviously, your your birth mother isn't dead. She didn't die giving birth to you. You were the product of an affair, and that's why you were put up for adoption. This is, her name. I don't know where she lives, but if you can track her down, that's on you to do, David. And he did. He went to see her, and they had a somewhat decent relationship, and he got on well with her daughter Rosalind, and he remained in close contact with Rosalind up until the point he was arrested for the crimes. And but he eventually ceased contact with his mother due to him looking on her unfavorably, due to her being an adulteress in his eyes. And although she did have an affair, and he thought less of her because of that, and he never even met his biological father. He wasn't able to, for whatever reason. I don't think he was able to locate him, or was basically warned off locating him by his biological mother. It's basically told that it wouldn't be good, like he wouldn't want anything to do with you. So to save yourself some heartbreak, don't waste the time. But then after he dropped out of community college after a year, he became a cab driver. So I think that this is the point where he's like, he has obviously his background as a cab driver. He starts to get to know the parts of New York City where maybe he doesn't go, sorry, too often. And obviously that would give him a good sense of, when planning to do the shootings or involved with others to do the shootings, good locations on where to hit, and also routes to escape quickly and to not be noticed, because New York is such a big city, and to be able to do something like a shooting and to get away quickly, you really have to know your way around. And what better job to learn your way around every corner of the city than being a cab driver? And that's what he was for a while, and then he stopped doing that. I think he didn't like dealing with the people. I think he was quite an antisocial, quiet loner type, and he didn't like the interaction. I think the best cab drivers are good talkers. A lot of these, some of the ones I never tip them higher. I never tip them very well if they don't really engage me in conversation. The ones that are very personable and chatty, and get to know you and ask you about, you know, your situation and stuff, and like why you're in the city, I always tip them higher. So that's probably why he quit, because his tips weren't very good, because he wasn't very good with people. So then he got a job as a postal worker with the postal service, and he wasn't like a mailman, but he was working in the sorting office, and like he was mainly dealing with just moving parcels and letters from place to place, for them to be, you know, delivered. And he didn't, according to his co-workers, he didn't really socialize with them much or engage them much with the conversation. But that's like the background on David Berkowitz and his kind of personal life, on you know, on the surface, shall we say. But this is where his crimes start, and I'll get into a timeline of them. He said his first criminal act, violent criminal act, was on Christmas Eve 1975, where he stabbed two girls with a hunting knife. Michelle Foreman, who was 15 at the time, needed to go to hospital and have stitches because she was stabbed 6 times by him in a frenzied attack. And the other woman, the other girl, she was a girl, she was under the age of 18. And thanks for liking, Amber, glad you're here. They both were separate and attacked at random. He went out and just attacked them both at random, and he said it was a frenzied attack, and he just wanted to hurt somebody, so he decided to go out and do it. And personally, I don't think that those are related to anything in the that he did as a group with the cult, but I think his involvement, as we'll get in, with the Process Church of Final Judgment, the cult that I believe he was in, and that many others believe he was in, and that he says he was in. I think that this incident was a form of initiation. I don't think they were helping him in this first act. I think that this was their way of saying, "Are you willing to spill blood for us?" And you know, a lot of these secret societies, they want you to incriminate yourself in order to get in, so that they can hold it over you as leverage. And that's what he said, and then that's a proven fact that these types of groups, they do that. And we'll get into more of a background on who the Process Church of Final Judgment is later on, but this is more just a rundown of his crimes and the timeline of when he did it. And this occurred in Co-op City in New York. And this wasn't initially linked to him, because all of his, you know, he was arrested in Yonkers, and none of his other, you know, none of the shootings occurred in Co-op City. And then he moved to Yonkers in early 1976, and then on April the 9th, 1976, this is when the first official shooting linked to the Son of Sam, or the Son of Sam, you know, group of shooters. So I don't personally believe Berkowitz was the gunman on every occasion, but these are the shootings linked to this case. On April the 9th, 1976, a woman was shot with a 44 caliber bulldog revolver, and this was only confirmed in 2004. And the woman didn't want her name to be made public, you know, because I would imagine she didn't want to be hounded by the press and wanted to try and forget about it. And this was only confirmed in 2004 by Berkowitz himself. It was an unsolved case, and the woman survived it, obviously, and that's what happened. And this was attributed as his first act, and this is what he claimed as his first act. And then on July July the 29th, 1976, Donna Laurie and Jody Valenti were shot while sitting in a parked car, and this was in Brooklyn. Donna died, but Jody was nearly blinded. So this is the first occasion where he's, you know, he's confirmed to have killed, or this shooter has confirmed to have killed in this campaign of violence. And then later, in November 27th, 1976, Donna DeMasi and Joanne Lomino Both were shot in Queens, but both lived. Lamino was left paralyzed. So you notice he does leave a couple of months between each shooting. So he is clearly, or the shooters, or him personally, depending on which version of events you want to believe, they are being careful in their attacks. They're not doing it too frequently to where a clear pattern could be emerged in terms of location. They're doing it in different locations, and and there's months in between them. So people's guard, suddenly begins to drop, and then bang, there's a shooting, and I think that that's by design to create the most amount of terror. As in a bizarre sense, if they were any more frequent, people could become desensitized to it. But having that level of calmness, quiet before the storm, it's in a sense more intimidating. And I'll get into why I believe that this was done later on, but I think it's got a lot to do with chaos magic and that type of occultism. Something that I understand and have studied quite intensively. So it makes a lot of sense to me when I see this type of pattern forming. And then after this, on March the 8th, 1977. So this is the longest period so far between attacks. Virginia Vosterikian was shot dead whilst walking home from the train station in Queens. She was a college student, and as she saw the shooter pull out his 44 caliber bulldog revolver, she held her book above her face in an attempt to shield herself. But of course, the 44 caliber round, being so powerful, went right through it, and she was killed instantly. And it's a real shame. And just that is a real shame. And then on April the 17th, 1977, so not that far removed from the last incident, Alex Asso and Valentina Suriani was shot dead in a parked car in Bronx. And now this is the first time he leaves a calling card and refers to himself as the son of Sam, which he left in the glove box of the couple's car in a real gruesome move. And this is obviously the media frenzy as well in motion at this point, and then the names being plastered everywhere. He was initially known as the 44 caliber killer, or the bulldog killer, because of the bulldog charter arms revolver that he used, or the shooter used. However, this is when he started to be referred to as the son of Sam, and we'll get into the meanings of that very soon. And then after this, in June the 26th, 1977, Judy and Sal Lupo were shot in a car after leaving a disco in Queens. Both lived, thankfully. And now we get into the final attack that was carried out, that was accredited to Berkowitz. Was the Stacy Moskowitz killing and the blinding of Robert Volonte. They were in a parked car in Brooklyn. And so during this time, absolutely, Val, rest in peace to all of the victims and everyone affected by this, and injured, and the family members still to this day. It's such a tragedy, and I think a complete miscarriage of justice, because I don't think that everyone who was involved was held to accountable, and many of the families of the victims feel this also. Many of the police officers who investigated this feel this also. So this is another case, and like, I do compare a lot of them to the Watts case, where there are a lot of players involved in this, and there is a clear conspiracy that it's not hard to understand and comprehend. None of this to me is as far-fetched as other conspiracy theories or theories about other cases that I've heard. It makes complete sense. During this time, couples were afraid to go out and socialize together. Women cut their hair short, especially brunettes, because that's who he, seemed to prefer to target. And a lot's been said of the fact that he was targeting couples in parked cars, men and women. And it said that the women with the brunettes with the long hair was very much like um, the way his mother looked when she was younger, and the speculation from many and from me that perhaps the killings that he was doing it and that partly motivated him to do this, as well as what we'll get into the cult indoctrination and and the trauma based mind control, brainwashing, and that type of thing. But a more personal reason that they were able to use, I think. Uh, to get him to do this against young people was that his disgust about how he was born. He was conceived in a situation like that where there were two lovers out, in a parked car, fooling around, having sex, on a date, or just two people who were, having an affair or whatever. He didn't know, but he, in his mind, felt that that type of thing was seedy and that he was doing a good thing. But also, I think that from a level of depression and self-hatred, that he was angry at his biological parents for even conceiving him, that really he wished he'd never been born, and that violence and that anger and that hatred and bitterness was used by these people in the process church, and used so that he would attack young people who looked like his biological mother and father, but generally young people in general, to maximize and cause the most terror, because that's what this cult, the process church of the final judgment, was seeking. And I'll get into the details of them very soon. Whenever I think of Watt's case, I think of how Shannon and the babies didn't ever get justice because NK and all the players still haven't been held accountable. I completely agree, and that's exactly why Amber still does the lives on it. And when I occasionally go up, that's why we do it. You know what I mean? Like, that's why we're still talking about it. And you, when you join us for them in the chat and saying your piece, that's why we're all still doing it. And that's what, I've had people say to me, that when I've mentioned to them that I still, I'm very invested in the Watts case and discuss it often. They're like, well, why? That wasn't that resolved years ago. And it just shows how naive these people are. There's so much more to it than the mainstream media or the DA or whoever wants to put out. And most people are so naive about crime and about criminality and criminology and the justice system that they really believe that when the police say that's all there is to it, that's really is all there is to it, and that they ignore or can't conceive the fact that maybe the police and that the DA lie sometimes for some very insidious and dark reasons, selfish reasons and dark, deep state reasons that is too much for the brain of most simple people to be able to handle. And I understand why most people don't want to allow themselves to comprehend or to conceive or ponder about these deeper things, that there is more to these stories, to these cases, than we're allowed to think, or than it's acceptable for us to think. Once you start putting limits on possibilities and ignore evidence, then there's no point in even being an investigator. There's no point in even being in true crime. And I think that the mainstream media and the cops, many police officers and the DA and high-powered police officers really don't do their jobs properly. They're there to be seen to be doing their jobs, but really just covering up when things get too dirty, too dark, and too deep. And I think that they're not fit for purpose, and this is the case all over the world, and it's symptomatic of corruption and of a system that protects itself, where you have instances where people are just totally gaslit for just wanting answers to basic questions. And when there's so many coincidences, like we'll get into with this case, There's too many to ignore, and it's the same with the Watts case, and same with many, many others. And people shouldn't allow themselves to be gaslit by the mainstream media or people who, you know, participate in groupthink. Because these people would, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, would call you crazy for saying that that world leaders are involved in sex trafficking, and a lot of them are pedophiles and involved in all kinds of sick abuse, and that they just call you psychotic or mentally ill. When now we all know that that's a fact, and the people who don't know it are deluding themselves, are living in total denial about the nature of reality, and there are a lot of people living like that, and that's exactly the types of people that the system and the powers that be wants to be around. That's naive Kool-Aid drinkers, and the best way to rebel is to not put limits on possibilities in any area of your life, and certainly not when you're looking into cases or things that may have happened. You've got to go where the evidence and when your gut takes you. You've always got to trust your gut, no matter what anyone says. Your gut and your instincts are more valuable than anyone else's interpretations or opinions. You've got to go with that, and obviously follow the evidence when it presents itself, but where it's lacking, follow your instincts. And if they're wrong, they're wrong, but at least you haven't lied to yourself or tried to deceive anybody else. So obviously, we discussed the final case, the final shooting linked to it, and Berkowitz was arrested on the 10th of August 1977. So from his first, self-admitted violent act in late 75 to toward the end of 77, got around like 2-ish years of a campaign of violence. And Berkowitz was arrested outside his Yonkers home, and he was actually traced. His address was traced by the police due to a parking ticket that he'd received at the scene of the final shooting. And, to be perfectly honest with you, I think that's where Berkowitz, although I think he participated, like he later admitted, in several of the shootings. I think the last one he didn't do. I think he was there to be a lookout, and he was also left to take care of the firearm, and was used very much as the guy who was going to take the entire fall of it, because he was easily, I think, led and intimidated by these people. And he also said that he was fearful of them and what they could do to his family, and we'll get into why that is right now. So this is the cult and the MK Ultra angle. Okay, this is where it gets more deep and dark. So John Wheaty's car was a neighbor, and the Carr family were neighbors of Berkowitz in Yonkers. And John is Berkowitz's neighbor, whose dog David claimed initially ordered him to kill the people, but then later said that he made that up to try and get himself declared insane, because he was worried about reprisals from the cult of the Process Church after being put in prison. So felt safer if he was in a mental hospital, and that's basically his argument as to why he said those things. But after he says that the cars were part of the Process Church, and were very much involved in the killings. These were people who were also involved in the cult, the Process Church of the Final Judgment, and very soon I'll explain in detail who they are and what they believe. And also mysteriously, John Wheaty's car mysteriously ended his own life only months after Berkowitz was convicted on an army base. And we've talked about crimes on army bases before. Like when We got Higgins, old Piggins from the Karen Reid case, destroyed his cell phone on an army base. So a lot of things seem to happen on army bases, but this was believed to be a him taking his own life, but many feel that the position of where the gunshot entered his temple was more consistent with him being shot by somebody else. And it's my theory and the theory of others that he was killed by the cult to silence him, and that would explain why Berkowitz was so fearful of prison, because he felt like, you know, that there could be reprisals on him, just to, you know, keep the whole thing quiet from coming out that there was any cult involvement with the Process Church, and stop people from probing in that direction. You know, no loose ends type of thing. And John Wheaty's car was also a known drug dealer, and it's believed that he would sell drugs to Berkowitz, and that they would all do drugs, the Process Church, whilst they were doing their rituals in Untermeyer Park in New York, where they would sacrifice animals and all kinds of disgusting shit like that, you know. And obviously, I'm into the occult and paganism, and you could call it Satanism, I suppose. I would accept that. But these people, to me, are the lowest of the low and the scum of the earth. You know, that then I don't see these people as being anything like me. They're diametrically opposed to me. I mean, to me, Satanism and paganism is about being closer to nature, and animals and children are like the closest thing to purest forms of nature that there is. And to attack and harm them in any way, and to do anything other than to defend them and protect them and and help them, you know, fulfill their potential in this world, is a crime against the gods and against nature. And it's certainly not something that you're going to derive power from. Really, these people, I think, were just deluding themselves. And also, I think that this was, the cult itself was a CIA front aimed at trauma-based mind control, and getting people to do these kinds of horrific things, to create a mass panic and a backlash against the occult. Because I think you can learn a lot of things about yourself and about the world around you by getting in touch with nature. And I think that cases like this, where the government's attempt to scare people off that, or stigmatize those that are doing it in a pure form, and get them painted with this kind of, you know, negative brush. Because I think that the government wants us to be, and the powers that be want us to believe that we're muck, and think that there's, you know, little to life afterwards, and be very materially motivated and driven, because I think that that we're easier to control that way. And they don't want us to understand our true potential inside. And I think that that's what magic, if you want to call it that, helps you to unlock. And it's a lot of wisdom, and if done right. But if in the mind of someone who's unhinged, it just makes you even worse. So you've got to go into it with a clear head, or it will punish you, you know. And these are an example of people like Berkowitz and his posse of people who were very damaged before all this. And it just really exposed their true character more than anything else. And absolutely, Val. Sorry, I missed. I've been missing your messages. Yeah, I just went on a tangent. So many people just believe the mainstream narrative. Exactly. And I always think of Amber and CDT when I think of the case. Yeah, the Watts case, absolutely, just catching up. A lot of people just don't want to go there. You know, absolutely, Val. You're totally right. And I think, like you say, like we've said to each other, uh, people's brains can't handle it, you know, and it helps them to get to sleep at night, you know, to you know, ignorance is bliss, you know. And I think that people, in even people who dismiss these types of things as conspiracy or whatever, and accept the mainstream narrative, I think deep down inside they have it repressed, where they do know that there's a lot more to life, but prefer to be ignorant, because, like I said, it helps them get to sleep at night, and they don't want to have to ponder the implications of all the things that could be going on that isn't plain to see for most people and is done under our watch, under our noses, should I say, and out of our plain view. But back to the Carr family, and it is quite a family. Um, uh, and then we have Sam Carr, who was the father of John Carr, um, and Sam Carr was basically where the son of Sam got its name from, and it's believed that that was a moniker that they adopted as a kind of a moniker for the group, and also Berkowitz referred to himself as that because Sam Carr was kind of the head of the he said of head of their subgroup of the Process Church, of his kind of uh, his faction of it, his group within it, and that his faction. I said that, and and also it refers to Berkowitz's time in the U.S. Army. You're serving Uncle Sam. You're a son of Sam. That's like a slang term, an old slang term for people who were in the service in the military. So it has two meanings. Yeah, and my mum thinks I'm crazy when I talk to her about it. Yeah, I think a lot of people's families, and I think a lot of people, like me included, are in that situation where I think people just you tell them these things, family members, and they just give you the look at like they just automatically dismiss it because that they either don't take you seriously or don't want to take you seriously, or they like we've been saying, they'd prefer to have that ignorance and feel bliss in their life as opposed to confront the hard truths. And obviously, I wish that our families, I wish your mother and members of my family, like my grandparents, my father, and a few other people who are less, willing to look into this stuff and accept it. I wish that they would, because uh, the more you know, the harder you are to manipulate and con. And the more you know what you're up against, and the safer and the more prepared you can be against the tricks that the media, the government, the system try to play on us, and are always playing on us. And once you're able to tell the signs, you're a lot safer, I think. And I think that's why we tell our families and our friends about this stuff, is because we care about them and we want them to be armed with that information and that knowledge that we think can help them and help keep them safe. It's easy for people to just believe it than go and think more into it, because it pulls them him an uncomfortable place, puts them in an uncomfortable place to be, that they don't want to go there. Totally agree with you, Val. You're absolutely right. I couldn't have said it better myself. It's people who they don't want to just constantly have to. I think it's people who are hypochondriacs and know that they are, and for kind of to self-regulate, I suppose, or to protect themselves, they don't let themselves do that as a kind of defense mechanism. But I don't see that as really a negative thing unless you're doing it endlessly. And I don't, I sleep pretty well at night, and not always, but recently I have, obviously with a little bit of help from some Mary Jane, of course. Which we're very 420 friendly on this channel. But I sleep pretty well, and I believe in a lot of what people would consider to be conspiracy theories, and I have quite a unique and unorthodox view about the natures of reality and about how the world works and about how the system works, and not a lot of people share it, and it doesn't keep me up at night. It doesn't get me paranoid, because I have faith in, I think, higher powers, in the gods, and in what I'm doing and saying and how I live. Where I think that if something's to happen to me, it's to happen to me. But I'm confident that that there are forces looking out for me as I am for everybody else who out there who is, you know, trying to do the right thing. Of course, bad things happen to good people, but I think that sadly that's the part of life, that there's a degree of unpredictability about it. But I think it's good for morale to always convince yourself that no matter what, there is someone looking out for you and something looking out for you in the universe, cosmically. A kind of, if you don't believe in a god, you know, it's like a kind of universal form of good. You know what I mean? And of peace and balance and harmony that exists, that's beyond our comprehension. I think that helps people deal with, you know, the negative things a lot. Not that, you know, that there's going to be some amazing place after this, but that as well as the bad things and the implications of the system, there's also a lot of good things that they're trying to hide from us. And I think that, you know, to balance things out, there is more good in the world than bad. I think that the powers that be would just like to convince us that it's the other way around. And I think it's always important to have a positive outlook. Yeah, absolutely, Val. Happy Friday, Diva Girl. Glad you could join us. Glad you could join us. And glad you could join us as well, Christine Fisher, regulars. And yeah, happy Friday, everyone. And we've been going deep on Son of Sam. And to go deeper on it, we discussed John Wheaty's car, who Berkowitz said was who was obviously was Berkowitz's neighbour in the Carr family, who they all said who. Yeah, and the Carr family, and oh, I'm a little behind. I was saying I'm jealous of you. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I knew you were talking about that. I knew you were talking about that when I said that. I sleep pretty well, yeah. and and yeah, yeah. I put two and two together on that one. I don't want to jinx you in regards to anything to do with that, so I won't say anything. But to do with the Carr family, um, the Berkowitz said that they were obviously we know they were his neighbours, and he said that they were involved in the Process Church, the cult that Berkowitz said he was a part of, that did the shootings with him, and that these guys were also gunmen, triggermen, and that the leader of it was the father, the patriarch of the family, Sam Carr, and uh, uh, one of the sons of Sam Carr, John Carr, was found and dead under suspicious circumstances only a couple months after Berkowitz's conviction, like we covered earlier. And then his other brother, Michael Carr, dies in a suspicious car accident in October 1979. So these key players who Berkowitz says were involved, and who press and media were interested in and believed were involved at the time, uh, all die within, you know, a year or two of the incidences. That's really fishy. You know, the fact that, oh, these were just his neighbors, and then they all, you know, apart from Sam Carr, ended up just, you know, dying very soon. And it seems like someone was tying up loose ends, and it wouldn't surprise me if it was Sam Carr himself or others within the cult who ordered his sons to be killed, as well as uh, trying to get Berkowitz killed as well, because Berkowitz's throat was slashed pretty soon into his sentence, and Berkowitz believes that Carr ordered the inmate to do it, or paid them money to do it, or something like that. And Berkowitz claims that they were all part of a group called the Process Church of Final Judgment. Now, this was a group that split from the Church of Scientology in Britain in the 60s, like quite early on in Scientology's life. And they are a doomsday cult, the Process Church of Final Judgment, with Gnostic overtones. And so they believed in bringing about the end of the world, by and the Antichrist would be a combination in their minds of Jesus and Lucifer. So this is where the Gnosticism comes in. This is kind of like taking the Bible and other kind of Middle Eastern type faiths and mixing it with, you know, aspects of Scientology and other kind of doomsday theories to create something that's kind of very much about bringing chaos and disruption to the world. So, you know, anyone who believes in like the Illuminati, it's like, or the New World Order, it's order ab chaos, order out of chaos. So using a front group like this to spread mass panic and murder certainly is something that I wouldn't put past the authorities. And this is why I believe it's a possible CIA front. And that, you know, Berkowitz claims they were all taking drugs, and John Carwell's a drug dealer, and that they would take drugs during the rituals that they'd conduct in New York's Untermeyer Park, where, like I discussed, there were sacrifices of animals and drinking of animals' blood and various other acts of debauchery and sexual debauchery and things like that. That I think is a complete disgrace and humiliation and mocking of nature, and puts you further away from the gods. And I think that this is all by design of the system of the CIA to bring people in who may have had aspirations to understand the occult, or just damaged people, and mess with their heads and make them even worse. And that's certainly what they did with Berkowitz. And that's what I believe, that they were drugging him with drugs like sodium pentothal and LSD, and planting false memories and suggestions in his head. So really, you know, make him very suggestible, and direct him to do these shootings, and also to be watched when he wasn't doing it. And Berkowitz claimed that he was the lookout for several of the shootings, and in fact, on one occasion, in one of his shootings, in fact, one of the later ones, where the two people were both lived, Judy and Sal Lupo, who were both shot outside a disco in their car in Queens. They said that the guy who shot them didn't look like David Berkowitz, but was a blonde guy who was considerably smaller in stature, and that description fits John Wheaty's car more than it does David Berkowitz. So that description, which was heard and given to the police, certainly puts doubt on the theory that Berkowitz was the lone gunman. And Berkowitz himself said he was the lookout on that instance, and he also claimed that that's why they both lived, because he wasn't the gunman, because he claims that he was a better shot because he was a marksman in the U.S. infantry. So you'd assume he'd be a better shot. And he claims that most of the times when people died, it was because of him, because he was the gunman. So it's like, it's not like he was some innocent party and all this. You know, he was the main trigger puller, but he wasn't always the trigger puller, and he wasn't the only guy involved, and he wasn't the mastermind of this. He was essentially following orders. Not that that's any excuse, but there are other people accountable for this, the cars and other unnamed people that Berkowitz claimed to be too fearful to name. But a possible connection as well was to the deceased vaudeville promoter and movie promoter and financier, Roy Raden, who used to host drug and sex parties at his mansion in out in upstate New York, where he'd have famous people, dignitaries, and it's believed that members of the Process Church would attend these types of parties. So it's very possible that Roy Raden had a connection to the New York chapter of the Process Church, and the Process Church was an international group, and it still exists in a much more reduced form. But I think that it had this peak, this pinnacle, because I think it was under the direction of the CIA at that time, and used as a an MK Ultra clandestine operation to test the effects of trauma based mind control, sodium pentothal, how they could influence people to carry out shootings, and also to create mass panic. Like I said, these people's goal is order out of chaos, and create the mass panic and then capitalize off it by having more control over people's movements, nightlife, uh, but of course, at the same time, the people who weren't in the know too much, like the business owners and the congressmen, the city councilmen, all the kind of lower guys on the totem pole, were all anxious to, I guess, have it that Berkowitz was the only guy, so that their job didn't have to get any harder, because the police had a tough enough time finding him. So can you imagine how difficult it would have been for them to find more, and how the media would have ran with that uh, story? That they weren't totally safe, and that there was still the potential for this campaign of killing to continue. And there was certainly mass panic, and it got so great that the mafia, the New York mafia, John Gotti, those types of people, were on the lookout for the son of Sam, and looking to get rid of him, because they felt that obviously it would win them the support of the people, to show that they could do the cops' job better than the cops, and people would turn to them more as an authority uh, uh, form or figure within the community, as opposed to the police. And also it may have, they may have even been able to win concessions and favors from the police as a result of doing that, and closing that file for them. Even if it wasn't the police getting the credit, they were happy to see it go, because it was taking up so much resources and making them look stupid and incompetent. Uh, Very much like the Yorkshire Ripper trial, Yorkshire Ripper murder campaign made the police look in the UK. So, a similar kind of thing, a spree killing, where it took the police a while to find one guy, and it's been, even in the Yorkshire Ripper case, which I will cover very soon. That's another case where it's been rumored that there were other people involved, and/or he was blamed for murders that he didn't do. And I certainly think that that's an interesting thing, and it makes you wonder how often that the police do that, whether they pin murders on someone who they've already got for a few murders, thinking, what the fuck, what the hell does it matter? What's another murder on their charge? They're a bad person anyway. But what that does is, it means that the person who really committed other murders, or possibly committed other murders, is free and able to do it again. And that isn't real detective work, or real police work, or real media work. You dig and you go as far as it can take you. And it feels like the mainstream media and a lot of the DA in this case dropped the ball, because, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the cops that have been interviewed after felt that, based off what I said with the differing witness testimonies of people who they feel didn't match Berkowitz's description, being seen visibly as the gunman on different murders, but Berkowitz also being identified on the scene and being seen earlier without a gun, which would lend to the theory that he was a lookout on some occasions. Hi, Melly, glad you could join us. That one girl, Melly, and obviously ATS and a few other people who have channels. Certainly go and check them out. Melly is always live. She's she really puts in the work in the grind for in the true crime world, and is always covering trials, and recently covering the Fitzsimmons case, which I've been following deeply as well. And a really tragic case, and I'm glad you could join us. And obviously, Melly's also been talking about Epstein, and I'm sure she can understand the level of censorship that you get on your channel when you talk about that. So, yeah, glad you could make it. And hi, Coffee and Skeletons. Glad you could make it and stop in and say hi. And It's I'm here in the bushes listening. Yeah, yeah. Thanks listening. Thanks for listening, everyone, and everyone. If you're listening, say hi if you feel like it. If you don't feel like it, it's totally understandable. I get just wanting to sit back and listen to it all. And you're very welcome, Melly. Glad you're here, and everyone is always welcome in my chat to come up, especially uh, other creators and regulars. So Melly, Amber, of course Val, who inspired me, my big inspiration for the trial, and someone who I care really a lot about, and it means a lot to me. You're all very welcome and very much welcome to come up anytime you want, and I'll just put the link out in the chat for anyone who is feeling up to it, but absolutely no pressure. I get that people are having to multitask and are doing multiple things, and I know Val's in the doctor's office, so everyone's multitasking to watch me, and I really appreciate that. So no pressure at all, but any guests are always welcome. But I think that this case, like I've said a bunch of times, highlights why I think going as deep as we do and having forums like this is important, because back in those days it was one journalist or one or two journalists who felt like there wasn't something right, and then latched onto it and did a lot of the groundwork into investigating the cars and interviewing Berkowitz himself and other people, and really uh, going deep on it all. And they were kind of, a lot of them, one or two of them that were doing it were really marginalized and in the dark and not taken seriously by mainstream media at all, and were warned off and threatened by the cops. And it's it just shows you the grey cloud that's hanging over this case, where people who were probing back in the day initially were warned off but kept going anyway. And there's been books published about this, but can you imagine the level of detail that could have gotten out, right back in the day, if we had forums like this, like YouTube true crime forums, where people can, state their research out aloud and compare it with others in a much easier way all around the world. And, obviously people's memories would be clearer back then. And if there was any extra details, eyewitnesses, witnesses, be easier to help, hear from them and get a clearer picture of things. So it would have been a huge help. But despite this, uh, dedicated, true journalists did some deep digging and was able to uncover like the conspiracy that I think that took place, that I've discussed this evening, morning, wherever you are. And I think it's a real deep one, and it's something that I think, honestly, Sam Carr's dead now, and all the Carr family are dead. But I think Berkowitz says there are others who were involved, and he, I think, owes it to his victims' families and the victims themselves to name these people. He's an old man; he's in his late 70s. What's he really got to lose at this point by naming people who will be old themselves, very old themselves? And Berkowitz was worried about his family. All of Berkowitz's family have passed away, virtually, so he's got really nothing to lose at this point. So maybe someday soon he might give a deathbed confession of the other names, and that could spark a reinvestigation and reopening of the case. But until then, it's very much like Watts, where we have all these deep feelings and intuitions, but the authorities and the mainstream just want to ignore it and cover it, and don't want to recognize it for some reason. But I'm gonna say my goodbyes now. But thank you, everyone else, everyone for coming. this evening, afternoon, whatever it is for you. I really appreciate the feedback and the interactions that I've had from everyone in chat, especially Val for being here the whole time and keep chatting even though you're waiting to go to the doctor's to your doctor's appointment, and let me know how that goes. Sending you my best and sending everyone else my best, and hope you have a great weekend. And I'll probably be live either early next week or possibly Sunday to discuss the Yorkshire Ripper case, because that's the next one I want to discuss. And I'll also be doing another special on Ireland, because my last video on Brendan Hughes, that kind of profile on someone who was involved in the war in Ireland that happened, did very, very well. And I want to do that again. So I'll find another figure to cover who was a big player in that war. And that's what we've got on the horizon in this channel. And thank you for joining us. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Take care. Thank you.